It finally happened. We got our first in-depth look at the gameplay for Paralives. They did a 45-minute uncut live stream where we could really just hop into live mode with the para. We checked out a couple of spots in Old Town and actually saw the paras interacting with one another, how the gameplay element was going to work. Now, I am going to give my usual disclaimers that I give for a Paralives video. Yes, I know this game is in pre-early access. Obviously, it has been delayed until May 25th, 2026, so they do have another 6 months of development. And Patreons, I have heard that apparently this live stream even went better than the live stream that they did for you lot a couple of weeks ago, which very much shows me that they are dedicated to actually taking on that feedback, that criticism, and working on what they know they need to work on so that it can add longevity once we as the public actually do get our hands on in the game. I also know that releasing in early access gives them like another 2 years to work until like the full release of the game, and I'm not holding that against them. I'm not holding the fact that they're an indie developer or they have like up to 15 people working on this game at any time against them. What I am going to be doing in this video is what the Paralives team have asked for, which is critical feedback and like critical looking at the game, telling them what I do like about the game so far, what I don't like so far, what I would maybe hope to see in the future. But again, I'm gonna obviously state this is early access. I'm not expecting all of this stuff that I'm going to be talking about, like releasing with the version that is going to be shipping on the 25th of May. Just really quickly as like a general note on the actual live stream and the videos that we get in the future and also the live streams that we get in the future, because they did say that they want this to be like more open and they want the wider community to be part of this. And hopefully we are going to get those live streams. We're going to like get to see Rena play more and more, and I do have a couple of points of what I hope they touch on in future live streams, so I would love for them to maybe go a little bit more in depth with like the systems. Now, I know as a Sims player, I am usually like, it's enough systems, like you need to stop working on the systems and you actually need to give us like gameplay to go along with the systems, and I think that's all very much intertwined, so I would love it if they actually got into like the emotion system, because I feel like the emotions were kind of glossed over. I don't really understand like which is the main emotion and whether you can like click into the other ones. I'm fairly sure you can, and I'm fairly sure you can get like wishes to raise your XP and stuff from the other emotions. So I would really love to see just maybe a little bit more information on the emotion system, the type of emotions that you can feel. I personally think that the emotion system held back The Sims 4 from its release, so I'm really hoping that I don't feel the same for Paralives. It was very singular para focused as well, which kind of scares me, because I think one of my biggest critiques about The Sims 4 is that is so like solo sim driven, and it doesn't really feel like you can make relationships and things feel really in depth when they do focus it on such a solo experience. So kind of hoping that we could maybe see a family live stream as well, so we could get a vibe of like how an actual like family interacts with each other rather than just like focusing on one para in the world and seeing like how they go about the world. But the negative traits as well, this time around they focus quite heavily on being able to make friends and having like quite a talented para from the get-go. I would like to see maybe in the next one making the game a little bit harder, seeing if there is that difficulty if you do have a para who's not really talented at anything and doesn't have a lot of like character skills. And I'd also just love to see kind of a little bit more negativity just in the game in general, like aside from the live streams. But I think they kind of have maybe fallen into the trap of things feeling a little bit too easy. For example, there was a failure actually on one of the chance interactions, and I think that would be really cool if the para that you were talking to just like noped out of the conversation at that point. If you failed to flirt with them, or if you failed to like make friends with them and they didn't want that, I really wish that they could just be like, no thank you, and actually just walk away from you. So there is actually that consequence, and it doesn't feel like as a player you can then just like continue playing and then be like, oh well, I can turn this around, like I can just keep being friendly to them and then eventually I'll have them as a friend. Because you know what, in real life not everyone gets along with each other. You might not fancy every single person that flirts with you, and I kind of wish that the paras reacted in a way of just being like, actually I'm gonna shut this down now, like please never talk to me again. And then it would be actually difficult for you to build that relationship back up and they could like fully exit out of it. It doesn't have to be that way every single time. If there is a failure but someone's still like kind of liking your vibe, I don't mind the conversation carrying on, but I do think that kind of taking that opportunity away from the player sometimes makes you want to play even more, because you're like, oh, my game told me that this was the story and like I want to prove them wrong and I want to go about doing it this way. And I just think having that resistance in a life simulation is sometimes a really, really good thing. I actually really like how conversations work in Paralives. Can I just say, I think the chance cards is a really cool way of interacting with like other characters and paras around you. It's a system that feels new to like a life simulation game. It's not just the same old like everything is open to you all at once. It's kind of the game feeling out how this relationship is going and then giving you options, because again, that's realistic. Like you don't know how someone's going to react to you. You don't know everything about them as soon as you like meet them. And I think those chance interactions actually drive it to feel like you are trying to get to know the person. Like you're trying to figure out their vibe and you're trying to be like, well, where do I go here? And I think that's really cool. I love the like limited options to it. However, it did get repeated an awful lot in the live stream of the percentages are based off like how well you know a para. But then right towards the end, Rena actually tried to flirt with another para who was actually and turned out to be taken. That was like the second one, and we had a 79% chance of succeeding when flirting with someone. And that to me feels a little bit unrealistic. However, the para was actually feeling flirty. So I don't know if maybe that was just like a miscommunication or like a misunderstanding from my point, but it did kind of feel like the para, because they were also feeling flirty, that actually also had an effect, and it wasn't just like how well the paras knew each other. So I would kind of maybe like a little bit of clarity on that, on how much do your emotions actually sway those cards and like the success rate, how much does just like knowing a para, because it felt like that was very overpowered if it just went off how well we knew that para, because we barely knew her. Following on from that, when it got revealed that she was actually in a relationship, I know this is probably going to come into it a little bit later when we have that like story progression element maybe, and like other paras living with other people and not just being like spawns in the world, and like actually having NPCs kind of feel like they are living a life. But I would have loved to know who she was in a relationship with, and maybe if she said like, hey, I'm in a relationship with this para, maybe that para gets added into your relationship panel as an acquaintance. I think that could be quite cool, because then you're like, okay, well, this is like this family, and maybe then you could ask like, oh, do you have kids? Like, do you have extended family? And I think that's quite a cool way to get to know eventually like the NPCs who are living their lives around you. Again, it kind of takes away from that like soloness of the game, and it's not just like, well, this is like this one para who is in a relationship but we don't know with who, and everything about them is a mystery. I kind of wish that you got to know like their families through just one para. Whilst we're on the topic of knowing paras, I know that this is in the before early access release for the roadmap and something that they want to do, but phone to invite them over in order to more easily continue the relationship relationships. Right now, it just feels like it's a lottery of who walks by and who you can actually like interact with, which of course makes it really, really hard to carry on those relationships and like form any sort of a friendship, because it's just a lucky dip of who is going to walk through. Knowing your co-workers as acquaintances from the get-go, that's a really nice touch. I like when they do that, because it at least means that you can start to get those balls rolling and you can start to live out your life and you can start to like interact with people from the get-go. So I did notice that the other paras that were walking around town, a lot of them use the same pathing. Like a lot of them use the same routes. They were disappearing through doors, which in early access really doesn't bother me all that much. That I think could take some players out of the game. It's never going to really take me out of the game. I also noticed that paras, when they were in groups together, were kind of like walking into each other and through each other. And again, that doesn't really take me out of it unless I'm like trying to take a screenshot or something. I think I can hold off on like all of that being fixed, but I would like it to not exist eventually. But I would obviously love to see the paras who were walking around maybe interact with each other a little bit more, you know, going about their days, making them feel like they are actually doing something rather than just like spawning, walking, and then despawning as just a way for your para to talk to them, because that's currently what it feels like. I also really quickly want to mention that there is the Notion site, which basically goes through their full like roadmap, and these are the things that they want to do before the early access release. Improving NPC autonomy based on specific lot type they're at. They're found inside shops, restaurants, and places that you visit to make it feel more lively, and also the routines around town to improve immersion are all listed on this Notion site. Also, new characters like moving into town and special character behaviors like the mailman, pizza delivery, etc. So I will be leaving a link to this down in my description below. If I do talk about something and you're like, oh, I think I've seen that somewhere, or like I would like to know what they are actually working on in case I don't say it for every single point, you will be able to go cross-reference the Notion. I didn't really like how the group system currently works. So obviously it's like a click and drag, which I've already kind of spoken. Like, what if a para accidentally gets in the way and then you like click and drag? I'm sure there's going to be a way for you to like remove them, and that will be quite easy to get around. But right now it feels like they've just programmed it for every single para that you're in a group with to actually follow the exact same route as you when they walk. When you choose go here, even if you don't choose a go here together, because that actually I don't think existed, just takes the paras that you are in a group with you. They went to buy a plant and they both swiped at that plant and they both had the plant, and it just feels like they're mirroring you, which I don't know if I like that for a group. I don't mind like a go here together. And I know some of you might say, well, why are you joining a group if you don't want them just to do like all the same stuff that you are? But I'm also scared for how that's going to work for like solo interactions. You know, what if I choose to go on the PC? Like, are they gonna flip out, and is there gonna be like bugs with them wanting to use a computer but a computer not being around? That does worry me a little bit, so I would maybe like to see a little bit more confirmation about how groups actually work and what you can actually do together as groups. I also noticed when it came to behaviors of the paras in the stream, it did feel like the para that they were playing as did kind of rely on both the PC and the phone. And yes, I have been burnt by The Sims 4 in the past. There also seems to be quite a bit of like idle animation, like at times, especially when the para like went to grab a snack and then had finished eating the snack. It felt like they were kind of just stood around like talking to themselves, and that feels like kind of an unrealistic idle animation. I actually think like using your phone is more accurate. I just hope it's not too overplayed, because it can get very, very boring very, very quickly. I obviously would love for them to focus more on like the interest that the para had. So for example, this para that they played with was into music, but they actually didn't have that many music activities on the lot. I kind of hope that if they had those activities, the para wouldn't have really focused too much on like programming and the computer side of things and had just like gone to work on his guitar skill or something. This kind of links back to me wanting to know more about about the emotion system, but there were times where I was like, how is that like correlated to that? There was a point where the para was feeling inspired, and that actually allowed a new like want for you to complete. And one of the new wants was literally like, go and have a snack. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but feeling inspired shouldn't link, I don't think, in my personal opinion, to you going to grab a snack. Like you going to the fridge and grabbing an apple. Maybe even just like going to watch a TV show or like read a book if you do want those more like casual things. I do think maybe they need to like pin those down a little bit more with what they currently have within the game. I think it should be inspiring the player just as much as it is inspiring the para. And I just didn't feel like sometimes those linked up with how the para was actually feeling all that well. It was stated that when your para goes to sleep every night, your wants are actually like cleared, and then you have to choose like new wants every day. I do hope that there is a little bit of customizability to that when it comes to the player. I do hope that you could potentially like lock in certain wants, because I think that wants actually help for you to tell a story. The wants do again seem a little easy right now, like going to grab a snack, etc. I do hope that there are maybe potentially like bigger wants in the future, or even just like having like a want to have one of those high graded jobs like as your very first job. So it meant that it limited you in the sense of you can't actually get one of those smaller jobs and you need to find alternate ways to make money, and then obviously like work on your skills so that you can have one of those higher paying jobs like as your first job. And I think that can really actually help with having players explore the game in a very deep way from the beginning, because that can kind of guide you through the gameplay to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to go about that. And maybe you hadn't thought to play that Paris story that way. And then you see that one and you're like, I'm going to actually lock that in. I just think wants genuinely need to be leaned upon a little bit more in life simulations. And I think they need to have more variety than what we currently have. I really don't want wants just to be like very simple things that you can get done daily. I kind of want them to actually make their way into my para's story. When the para was cooking a pizza, when he actually pulled the pizza out of the oven, it didn't actually look cooked until he put it down on the side. Now that is just a little bug that I'm sure that they're gonna look into. The talent level ups that you currently get from getting like your personality experience up do feel quite limited. It looks as if you can unlock, I think it's either 2 more or 3 more under like your vibe and your talent, etc. However, for only having like 3 of those available, it felt like the choices that we actually saw in the stream felt quite small for what they were, and I don't want the game to feel too easy. I like that those aren't like too overpowered and don't make it ridiculously easy from the get-go. However, I would maybe like them to have like a little bit more impact. I think the one that we chose on the talent, which was our para's music, I think we chose to unlock in the live stream, like listening to music removes sad emotions for like the next 2 hours. And that just feels like very, very minor in the grand scheme of things when you can only have 3 of those in total. I don't know if maybe as you level up, you'll be able to replace those things with like higher powered ones. I think that's probably how I would want it to work if we are limited to just those 3 throughout the full gameplay, because then once you've leveled up a couple of times, it then becomes redundant. And I do think it's a cool system that they probably should make some longevity to. But again, all of this is coming from someone who has just watched a live stream and hasn't actually had hands-on with the game, so I don't know how they actively do work. These are kind of just my suggestions for how I would want it to work. I saw a couple of people actually comment this on my original video where I just did like my first reaction to this, but you lot don't seem to like that when your para goes to work, they just spawn out of existence. Now, this isn't a deal breaker for me. I don't mind, because realistically all your para would be doing is like either walking out of their house or the building that they're currently in and then disappearing. What I didn't like is when they actually disappeared, when they came back from work, they just respawned in the exact same place. place. So Rena actually lost track of where the para was, which was quite nice to see that there is just like a camera mode that you can click and it just flicks right back over to the para that you're on. However, I do wish that they at least spawned back in either just outside their house or in their house. And I do wish that you could choose what they actually got up to in work. Obviously, they go off lot. It's not like active careers yet. But Rena seemed quite surprised that their para was working on their exercise in work, even though he worked in music. And I don't think there is currently like any way for you to actually control what they get up to. Whereas I would like it to either like get up relationship with coworkers or take care of their needs a little bit more. On that note, I think that the shower need and also the energy need should continue to go down whilst you're at work, but they can obviously eat and use the toilet whilst they're at work, so I don't mind them coming back with those full. I definitely just think we need some options for what they actually can get up to whilst they're at work so they can continue working on skills if you want them to, etc. There is also currently the classic overuse of the swipe interaction, which kind of shocked me a little bit because I feel like that has been feedback that the Sims team have been getting for years, and I was a little shocked to see that the swipe interaction had been used so much. And what I mean by that is like the animation, like when he went to clean up the dishes, when he went to like pick up the guitar, when he grabbed something, I think from the bakery, everything was done with like one fluid animation, the same way that that happens in The Sims 4. And I feel like so many people hate that. And again, I know it's cheaper, I know it's easier to do, I know it's easier to animate, and I know that animation is one of the most time costing things in game development, and also like money costing things in game development. So again, I'm not holding this against the Paralives team, but I think it was just a little bit surprising when I know so many of the Sims community have had an issue with that they decided to go with that so frequently. And I do think that could eventually start to feel stale. So I just have like a little, let's call it a beige flag around that. This section is kind of just like more gameplay eventually, like somewhere down the line. I think they've actually introduced something like pretty cool, and this is just what I would love to see maybe furthered on a little bit more. So they have the new paper, which actually gives you like little quests for your paras to do. It also just has some like quirky humor that eventually I hope that evolves into like NPC behavior and you can get to know like the specific people, like the mayor, etc. I also think eventually it could lead into like horoscopes, so you could read your horoscope for the day. Then you could have like good luck for the week, which means that you get promoted faster, your skills go up at a slightly higher rate, like your relationships are all going really, really well. Or you could be unlucky for the week, and so you have the opposite of all of that. It's really hard to get up your skills. Your para may just like wanna like laze around and like watch TV and sleep in their bed. They also maybe start to struggle, maybe get a couple of strikes in their work. I also think there could be like an agony ant piece where paras actually do write in to this agony ant, and maybe you think that a para that you know is writing in about you. Maybe it's like, I have a crush on this like coworker, but I don't know what the next steps are, and then that kind of guides the player to be like, okay, am I gonna experiment with this? Am I just gonna like let that fizzle out? Do I maybe want to take the bait? Am I gonna be annoyed about this? I think it could definitely add on to some very, very funny situations. Maybe you think that they're talking about your para, but then when you actually go to confront them about it, you get super embarrassed because it's like, absolutely not. That was not about you. Like, you ick me out. That's disgusting. Now I don't actually want to be friends with you. They have mentioned that there is, of course, going to be a museum. You can collect things around the town. You can either donate those to the community center, which I'm assuming gives you rewards and stuff, but they actually didn't go into any of that. And you can also donate them to the museum. I would love it if the museum was an actual place. I would love it if we could actually walk around the museum and like read facts about the things that have been added in. I love a teachable moment in a video game. I think Animal Crossing is like my tip top for like museum kind of development. I love how Animal Crossing does museums. Coral Island also had a museum, but it definitely wasn't like as good. I definitely would love to have NPCs working in the shops. Right now, I know they said that they're working on like having NPCs actually be in the shops, but I would also love to get to know like the baristas that serve you in the coffee house, or like the person who runs the antique shop. And also when it comes to the shops, I think obviously we did see that there were a couple of sale items. I think it would be really, really cool not only to have those sale items, but also maybe a markup, especially in like the antique shop. Or I really wish that shops actually had like specific items that was only available in those shops. So it kind of encourages you as the player to go check out those shops like maybe weekly. I don't think I would want to be doing it daily. I wouldn't want to like miss out on items that frequently, but I think changing those weekly and like having specific furniture that you could only buy in those shops is just a cool way to actually have a player go look at those shops and interact with those characters, rather than just having like all the stuff there that you can just buy from build and buy mode. I know I've seen a lot of people talk about the UI. A lot of people are feeling like the UI is too big. I don't think that even in early access, and maybe not even for like the 2-year period of early access, they're gonna have like resizing when it comes to the UI, which is unfortunate. I do kind of hope that you can like pause and play whilst you're actually in an element of the UI, because right now the UI is very oversized, and we noticed it even in the live stream. Like the para, because the game was still ongoing, they did actually level something up, but because that level up was in the middle of the screen, the UI was overlapping it and we couldn't tell what they had leveled up, and that feels just a little bit messy in my opinion. I maybe think like if you do have the UI open and the game is still going and you haven't paused it, maybe you get a little like side notification like over here on the screen that's like, hey, you leveled up in this, just so you can kind of see it a little bit more. I always think life simulation games have so much like dedication when it comes to like representation and making your characters who you want them to be, and like customization in build and buy mode and all of that. And then UI just like gets completely left behind, and I don't even know how realistic it is as like a game developer perspective, but to be able to move the UI around the screen and like place things where you want to place things and just like pin it to where you want it to be. They've already shown that you can pin interactions, which I think is really, really cool. And then you can right click and that will actually do like that interaction as the default. So for example, for Go Here, you want to set a para to run everywhere, you can just right click and that moves them faster. That's really cool. It also lifts it up to the top of the list, so you can kind of always have your favorites on top, which I think is really, really important for when that UI becomes more and more and more cluttered. And I hope they keep that customization, but I would also like to see it in other menus. Going on from that, I want to quickly talk about the things that I really, really love, because that's an element that I love. However, I do also hope that that either can be applied to individual paras that you actually have even within one family. So maybe for one para, you can have them like run everywhere if that's kind of like their vibe and they're like really like cluttered in their mind and they're just like go go go, or they're quite athletic. But then for someone else in the same household, you could right click and they would like walk over there at a leisurely pace. And then if that isn't possible, I at least would like to customize that like household by household. If you can have like different households in a save file, for example, I wouldn't want that just to be the default for the game, like every para in the game. I would want it to realistically be para to para, and if they can't do that, I would like it to be like household to household. From the get-go, I really love the amount of jobs. I think the way that they've done it, where you have like sectors and then you also have like a bunch of jobs within that sector, is very cool. They didn't really explain if like those jobs are just like later versions of some of like the newer jobs, or if you're just gonna be like a musical therapist up until like level, I think it's 30, like rank 30 that you can be in a career. I also really loved it that they have jobs that you actually need to work on your skills for, and you can't just get them from the get-go. Like that feels so realistic to limit it in that way, and I really love the different schedules that you can choose. I think they've done a really good job on the jobs. However, I do hope eventually that, say if you're a manager in like the music career, those skills and that like skill set that you have created can then potentially be moved on to something else. So maybe you do have a lot of skills in music, but that's also allowed you to maybe have quite a bit of skill in like charisma. And then you could take those skills that you've learned as a manager in that position and take them over to another sector. So maybe you then become like a manager in business, or you become a manager in like another sector of work. I doubt like you being a manager in the music career could then take you into being a manager of a hospital, for example, but it could. Like, I feel like CEOs and those like really high up jobs, like there's so many transferable skills. And I actually think that Paralives is leaning on realism a little bit more than I thought they would. I think a lot of people, because of the cartoony art style, maybe wrote it off a little bit and were like, this isn't going to be like a realistic life simulation. But I actually feel like it potentially could be. Again, like I said, from the chance cards and not knowing how everything is going to go and not having like all these options open to you all at once, that to me feels realistic. And I've seen a couple of simmers say, I'm gonna miss like the humor of The Sims, and you know, it doesn't feel like Paralives really has that right now, but I do feel like it has its own humor. I've seen it in the newspaper, I've seen it in a couple of the interactions that you can do, although that does also scare me. Because sometimes I feel like when they add humor, something was described as whimsy in Paralives the other day, and I was like, is that gonna age well? Like, find your whimsy? That feels so 2025 coded to me now. And if you think we've got 2 years of early access, like, is that gonna feel stale and age not great eventually? I also really enjoy how they mentioned that skill learning speed depends on the emotions that you're feeling. The para that they were playing with felt overjoyed quite a lot, and I saw a lot of people being concerned, like, oh my god, like, it felt like everything was going really, really fast, but I think that's because they were kind of in a positive mood a lot of the time. However, I would also like them to go into a little bit more information about the like skill categories, because I didn't really understand. I like that they have the categories of music and then they have like guitar, triangle, piano underneath it. I think that's cool, but I don't think it's cool if like the music doesn't actually like do anything within the game. Maybe that is just like for careers eventually, like if you have this skill set in music, like maybe you don't have it in guitar but you can still get this job, which again is cool, but I think I would like it to do more than that within the game. I don't know yet what I would want it to do, but I think when I play it and when I actually get my hands on it, I'll be able to like come up with actual like proper feedback that is workable of what I would like things to do and where they could take it further and where they could push the game. And finally, I also really liked how it seemed that the emotions can steer the dialogue options and start to affect a relationship. Right at the end, the para wasn't feeling good. They needed to go to the bathroom. They needed to go to sleep. They were feeling pretty darn miserable, and that led to the conversation going absolutely downhill, because all they wanted to do was like complain, basically, like tell about needing the toilet, tell about needing to eat, and then also just like some super uncomfortable like third option. So Rena just like exited out of it, but I kind of wish that Rena had gone a little bit further with it just to show those like negative relationships as well. Like, I really wish that we had gone out there and like made an enemy or made someone's day just a little bit worse by talking to them. And not even a way of being mean, but just being like, why is this person like trauma dumping on me? Like, what the hell is happening? I think out of everything we've seen so far, those dialogue picks are what makes me so excited for Paralives. I feel like it's a completely different like way of interacting than we've seen in like any other life simulation. And I like how it feels like as a player, I don't know what's going to happen. I think that's fun, and I think that's what we need more of. But thank you all so much for tuning in to this video. If you do actually want to go see my like first reaction and like how I actually like talked about it from the get-go, I will leave that linked at the end of this video. Big thank you once again to the Paralives team for the communication on the delay and also for the communication following it. They were like, yeah, you know what? We're gonna start holding ourselves accountable. We're gonna show you like what we currently have. We're gonna open it up to the wider community, not just the people who are paying to like support us either on Patreon or on Discord, which I do actually need to join the Discord. Sometimes I just just feel it's so overwhelming, and I'm just like, maybe I'll just wait for like official stuff to come from like YouTube, etc. But I really do hope that they continue with these live streams. I hope that they do dive in to the programs and the systems a little bit more so that we as players can kind of figure out how these things work and why they work the way that they work before we actually get our hands on with the game. But thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all for watching. I would love to know, what do you think is really, really good about what you saw? What would you like to see changed? What personally do you think is maybe going to take you out of the game a little bit once you actually do get your hands on it? And what is like something that you kind of need to see before you actually like dive into this game? I would just love to hear all of your thoughts, honestly. I appreciate you all, and I will speak to you all in my next one. Bye now.